Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra, and today I'm talking to a very prominent concert pianist from New York, Mira Armij Gill. Mira comes from mixed heritage. Her mom is from Salt Lake City, Utah, father Punjabi from India, and Mira teaches piano at the 3rd Street Music School Settlement in Lower Manhattan, and she recently won the coveted Top 2021 Piano Teacher Award from the president of Steinway and Sons. So congratulations, Mira, and welcome.
Thank you, Renee. Nice to see you again.
Yes, you too. So Mira, you had this dream at the grand old age of 6 to be a concert pianist. And you wrote a letter saying, I want to be a concert pianist. And your father wanted you to take on stereotypical careers like doctor, engineer, teacher, IT professional. And so you went against all odds, and with your tenacity and your commitment and your perseverance, there you are where you are at this point of time. And tell us your journey, because I know at 15, you already had won the Symphony Gill Concerto competition in Utah.
Yes, we would compete. By the time I was 11 years old, I was competing in 6 or 7 competitions every year, and they were annual. So you would repeat competitions and go up to the next level, and you would have new repertoire. So the Guild was one of the competitions we did yearly. And I just remember when I was 14, I'd made the finals and I wasn't placed. And I cried. It was very upsetting. But my mom said, you know, you've tried this so many years, every year from when I was 11. Maybe, you know, don't do it this year. We can skip it. Why go through that torment? And she was more concerned with my getting discouraged, and it was painful. And I just said, you know, let's try. I have to try again. And I had the Liszt concerto that year, that when I was 15. So you study the concerto basically for a year. My teacher gave it to me when I was about 14. And I did the competition again, not expecting, hoping it would go well. And I made the finals and I was chosen for first place. And thinking back, had I not pushed through, even remembering the pain and thinking, I don't know how I would win this, I wouldn't have won that competition. And I do think it was pivotal because that particular concerto, I did 2 other competitions within 2 months in Colorado and Texas, also national competitions. And I won the grand prize, one of 3 winners in Texas, and first prize in Colorado. And I got to go and perform the concerto with the orchestra in Colorado as well, and Texas, all within 4 months of the Utah Symphony performance. And you start to feel like, you know, is this what being a concert pianist is? And it's, you know, you practice hard, you take your lessons, and you have competitions to go and be measured in. And it seemed like a formula that was working. And my playing seemed to speak to the listeners and the audience. And so one thing fed off of the other, but it definitely doesn't come immediately.
And after that, there was no looking back. Such pivotal, defining moments for you. And then you made your debut at the age of 23 at the Wiley Carnegie Hall in New York. That is such a prestigious landmark place.
Yes. Again, that was a competition that I did more than once. My teacher, John Browning at the time, encouraged me, you know, do it again next year, see if they offer you the debut. And I was selected the next year, and I had a different program. And it was very pivotal because if I hadn't gotten that at that particular time, I actually might have given up because there were a number of other things going on. And so it was very encouraging, and you feel like, well, you have a big stage in a year. So what are you going to do for this year to get ready? So it gives you a year's worth of work and planning, which helps you focus your attention. And also, well, I'm not going to give up now. I have a year. to prepare.
Let's go to your Juilliard years. You're being the protege of John Browning, you mentioned already. Very famous pianist of his time. And I think you were one of the 3 students.
Yes, that was a big deal. And when I first found out he was going to be my teacher, and I was still back home in Utah, finishing out my senior year of high school, I told my teacher obviously found out, and then she'd tell her students. And so people started giving me CDs of this concert pianist. This is going to be your teacher, John Browning. Have you heard the CD? And I get CDs of his works of Rachmaninoff and Barber, and I was just in dismay. And particularly a couple nights before I was about to fly to New York, I was practicing and taking a practice break. So right from the bench, the TV's nearby. I turned on the TV just to scan the channels, and I came across our public television station there, PBS there, and it happened to be the Boston Pops with John Browning playing Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. And it was just a coincidence. I was just scanning the channels randomly in the evening on a practice break. I didn't even know the Boston Pops was on and that he was playing that week. So I saw my teacher for the first time just on a stage like that. And I knew in 2 days, I'm moving there and this will be my teacher in just a matter of a week or so. And that really was, my jaw was just dropping. I still just couldn't believe I was going there and that he was going to be my teacher. And the first year, actually, there were only 2 of us. And my second year, I was his only, I think it was my third year, I was his only student or so, second year. And then the third year, he picked up another girl. But there were only 3 of us for that period of 4 years. And he was very selective because he only wanted to take on a few students at a time.
Wow. And how was it studying under him? I know he was very strict.
Yes, he wouldn't hear anything unless it was memorized. And he told me that at my very first lesson. And that was actually one particular reason I avoided another famous teacher at another conservatory. I thought, well, I'm not going to try to study with him because I don't know if I could do that. And then this was the challenge I was presented with when I went to Juilliard with John Browning. And he said, there's no worth, it's not worth working on something unless it's memorized. So I insist you memorize anything you bring to me. And literally as soon as I had run out of notes by heart, I would stop playing and he would come over and we would work on whatever I'd presented. And if it was 2 pages, so be it, because it could be 7 days old. If I just had a week from the last lesson, whatever I brought, I was learning and memorizing it for the first time. So that was very challenging. But he had a memory that at the time I didn't know he was the second place winner of the Queen Elizabeth piano competition in Brussels. And for that one, the last round, they are presented with a commissioned work by a living composer that only those finalists are given, and they have to prepare it in 1 week for the concert stage for the final round, and their winners are chosen from that. So they have minds of steel, and he was the second place winner from that. And that meant his memory was just from another world. And luckily I didn't know that at the time because I was already dazzled by him and what he was asking me to do. So he was very keen on mental preparation. He said his teacher, Rosina Levine, insisted you know everything by heart. You should know it's finger 3, playing the E in the right hand. You should be able to go through, your piece could be 50 pages or 100. You should be able to go through the score mentally like this everywhere. He said, if you don't know it like that, then you're not prepared for the stage because your mind doesn't have a true handle on it. And he admitted to me that when he was presented with that as a student, it seemed like some sort of rocket science at first. And so little by little he tried, and he found the value and the possibility of doing it, that he was capable of doing it. And hearing things like that stays with you, that you also see the vulnerability of even concert artist, somebody who's now in this position, and to hear about the germination of some of the training they had, of challenges that you see as impossible, to hear that they thought something might have actually been impossible too, even if it was something as simple as studying a piece. And that makes them a little more human to you, to see that maybe you could try to travel this course that they have already, mastered and, gone past. So that's the great thing about going to a place like Juilliard. You're around these huge talents and big names. And when they can impart any of that history to you, you can learn a lot.
Such great advice from such a towering personality as John Browning. And he collaborated with Samuel Barber, who has left such a great legacy in music.
He was commissioned for the inauguration concert of Lincoln Center to write the piano concerto that John Browning was a young adult at that time.
John Browning inaugurated the Lincoln Center, right?
Yes, he was chosen for Barber to write his concerto for him to perform and premiere in the inauguration concert for Lincoln Center. So Barber's habit, as many composers have, is when they're going to write a major work for someone, they do like to stylize it. And he told Browning, I want to know every way that you were trained, all the technique that you know, easy and difficult, that Rosina Levine has taught you. And they would spend hours at his home, and he would take notes, and then he composed the piece with all of these elements in mind to make this gargantuan work that is quite famous and to critical acclaim. And so to be able to work on anything Barber after having studied with Browning is always a big challenge. And also you like to feel you could channel some of that energy and, the ideas and thoughts that he brought to his own playing of modern works.
Wow.
He was the champion of modern works, actually. He didn't do it a lot, but he did, like to stay current, John Browning. So I think that probably stemmed from that, maybe.
And now you're coming up with a new CD, which is compositions of Samuel Barber, his piano sonatas, and play one of the pieces, the piano sonata movement 1, which is kind of, I believe, a little dark and haunting, but very mesmerizing.
Yes, I was drawn to this piece because it has such a wide range of color and moods and expression. And the first movement particularly has a very angular figure that keeps coming back, that's almost rude and sneering in its nature, very fragmented, but then it has haunting, long, lyrical, dark melodies, which make this counterbalance. And I find that these kinds of elements that you find in pieces almost kind of mirror personalities that I'm sure not just artists have, where you have a dark and a light side. And everyone can be more in the happy side and optimistic side, but you can also be in the dark, brooding side. But even dark isn't always negative. It's almost like it's this balance. And when you find the perfect a melody that's so beautiful and it balances something that's so dark. Dark is very fun to play, even when it's loud and aggressive. But I think that when your personality also can have these two sides, I think you're drawn more to pieces maybe that have such stark contrast. So the Barber Sonata, the first movement, has that. And I will play that for you now.
touches your soul. It rejuvenates you. Now, that's what music does. And I know that you practice for 10, 12 hours a day with that focus to master the technique. How do you get that focus and that concentration?
One thing from my competition days, from when I went to my competition teacher when I was 11, everything had to be mastered. She kept using the word perfection, which I try to find other ways to communicate to my own students, because that can be so stifling. But she literally said it. You need to do it 3 times in a row, perfect, and move on. Break your whole piece up into sections, which takes so much time. But I think I was able to sit through that literally with striving for that kind of perfection anyway, as a lot of her students were. But I do find that I tend to clock hours that I didn't hear other people say, my peers, 10 hours. The 12 hours was before I was getting ready for my auditions for conservatory. And I did take 2 weeks off of school to prepare, because I realized this is 12 hours to get through an hour and a half of music for the next auditions I must take. And I can say that I'm sure it stems from my family being from the Indian culture. And even my mom, even though she's American, she was attracted to Eastern meditation and philosophy and practices before she met my dad, he was a Sikh, a Punjabi Sikh, and he was meditating. They meditate from very young too. So when I was 4 years old, I was introduced to the concept and practice of meditation, and I was sat to be still for 5 minutes at least when I was 4 years old. And from there, they might add 5 minutes more to my meditation when I was 5 and such. But the idea of having to sit still and be focused and quiet is very difficult for even adults, let alone when you are 4. But I do make a through away from learning it so early on to being able to sit for long hours at the piano, or many things that you have to do when you're studying for exams, but particularly piano, because you have to repeat things so many times to get it just one way. And a teacher I had in masters commented when I was preparing for my debut, and she just said, I don't know how you literally have told me you practice 9-10 hours a day. And she said, I don't think I could have done that. She said, I didn't do that. And she said, none of my students seem to have that acumen. And I it's something very unique to you. And I think that's when I put it together that, well, this must be from that tradition of having to have sat still from so young. And then it translated into something I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, your mom planted that seed in you, and it's so very important to have meditation. We need to create that space daily in our lives for meditation, to harness that energy from within and to keep ourselves spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically happy. And so meditation is such a powerful tool, and you've used it for your craft and for your life.
It's one of the higher forms of art, music. And so I try to use that as, something that inspires me to keep at it and try to also give the best that I can.
Now, you have taught the South Asian Youth Action Organization in New York City, and they were these young kids who had never even had a piano or keyboard, and they learned from you, read music and piano. And this must have been a very rewarding, gratifying experience for you. This was goes back to about 11 years ago.
Yes, it was quite by chance that I came across that organization, and they were looking for somebody to help them find a tuner for their piano. And I had taught the son of one of the board members for a decade, and he was already in college. So she introduced me to the head of Saya, Uday, and it turned out he was very taken with my background as a pianist that went to Juilliard who was half Punjabi. And he felt he really wanted to introduce that type of person into the community of younger Indian and just South Asian youth. And he said, but especially for Indians, you don't hear of many going to Juilliard or pursuing piano.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to put me on the career fair in it, oh, great if you have a tuner for our piano, but he really elevated that into something of such meaning. And for me, being not having both Indian parents, my dad had come to the States when he was 20. And so there were a lot of parts of my culture that I actually did not take part in because of this bit of separation with my parents having these two different cultures. And I think my dad assimilating a little bit more, trying to. So I always felt I would like to have been more part of that culture, or give to that culture somehow once I was done with Juilliard. And it just all came to me at once. And I said, well, it seems like you offer sports, you offer academic extracurricular, training and study with these students for free. Is there some way to also, involve the piano? If you have that piano that needs tuning, maybe I could offer a concert, a gala concert. We could raise money for the organization. Sounds great. Or even beyond that, lessons. Is there some way to offer them something more tangible? And it turned out he liked it all. He said, yes, career fair. And if there's some program you could work out, we could do it as a trial and see. And so they had 7 students sign up for the first 5-week period we organized. And I had to teach them all at the same time with one piano in one block of time twice a week. And I said yes. I would just always say yes. And as soon as I sat down and thought about what I said yes to, and the class was about to start, it was looming. I had a few weeks to get ready and whatever. But I was like, what did you just agree to? How are you going to teach 7 students that have never played, that are teenagers, all at the same time? What are you going to do? Are you going to just give an academic theory class? Because that's what I didn't want it to turn into. I wanted it to be playing. I wanted them to be like my actual students, but it's not one-on-one. So, and I had 5 weeks, and usually in 5 weeks, a student can be playing, but that's one-on-one, and still they're not playing a lot. So I had lofty goals for these 7 kids. And even within 3 weeks, I just organized things. So I would group them, 3 at the piano. I found special music that 3 of them could play at the same time, but I couldn't even get to that until around 3 weeks because they weren't playing that much that they could read independently with others playing at the same time. But little by little, twice a week, we ended up with maybe 3 hours twice a week, the 7 of them all together with me. And they were actually playing some proper scales and reading notes that spanned about this far on the piano. They understood, and even beyond, because they understood how to expand it. They read off of the staff, not by rote, because by rote you show a pattern, they memorize. None of these students had pianos or keyboards. Maybe one might have had a random keyboard, but we offered them the piano in this the space that we were teaching them at. We were in the basement of a church. They're still there now. And the music that I would use in the lessons, we would have the whole library of it on the piano, and they could come and practice on their own. And to my amazement, these teenagers that were coming for free and could have just blown it off and thought, oh, what is this? They systematically, they did some work, found ways to do some work on their own in between, were very attentive to the lessons. And every single one of them left the class after the 5 weeks playing and reading pieces, actual small classical pieces. And even the director would come in, I would bring him in for a quick show and tell every so often, at 3-week points, even the 4-week point. We did a little performance of them before we finished it out. And he just kept asking them, are you sure none of you ever took lessons before? And for myself, every time I was about to go back for another class, I took it like a huge mantle was on my shoulders and responsibility. What am I going to do? How do we move the ball forward from last time? And we have this many left. We have 2 weeks left, whatever it was. And my feeling was, if they never see a teacher again for piano, they never get to have another lesson. Maybe this 5 weeks will just be the trial, or they won't come back. They'll be too busy. I want them to be able to play at least what we've learned there, and that they can explore some music on their own, even if they never have a lesson again. So that was my goal. And I feel like we got to that point after the 5 weeks, but I didn't know if it was going to work. It was very experimental, and luckily they were so, they took it in like nectar, I felt. And I just said, I'm so proud of you. You have so many things you're busy with. I just think of teenage boys, 15 years old, 13 years old. It wasn't even geared towards one age. So it was such a wide range that 7 kids could feel very disconnected. And they really stuck with it and showed to be capable, very capable. Hand position even. I was very traditional the way I taught them.
Now, this summer, you're traveling to Austria for the second time. It's the Austria Summer Music Festival. So you're going to go for 17 days, getting master classes, and 2 of your students are joining you as well.
Yes, I have 2 teenage boys going, and they're very excited and working hard. And we have a festival that I'm just a part of, and it's the second year. And I was able to go the first year, which was just before the pandemic. And they have daily master classes and concerts for the students to perform in. They have strings and some winds, I believe, and voice and piano. And they focus on chamber music, but all the students need to bring solo repertoire. So they have a variety of things to perform and have lessons daily with various teachers. And they've had teachers from the Vienna Conservatory also teach there and give master classes as well. And the students will have coachings with the chamber coaches, and then perform. They have all kinds of concerts, even in the market square outdoors. So the traditional European setting in a market square, little village square, it's so picturesque and beautiful to see your students there playing. And as faculty, we also were teaching all the time and giving these master classes as well as performing ourselves. So it'll be a wonderful experience. And the last 3 days we'll spend in Vienna.
So teaching to playing, what do you prefer?
Well, I felt sometimes when I don't see a concert on the horizon, and I'll be like, I'm just teaching. And you almost say it in this kind of sigh of disappointment. But at the same time, I always have some goals and deadlines that I set for my students, whether it's exams that they're striving to do well in and hopefully be acknowledged for some other performances if they do well, and just recitals in general and performances. So I try to put my full energy with whatever I have in front of me. And I do know that my playing feeds my teaching, and my teaching feeds my playing. They're very different in the respect of the output of energy, because you're speaking and you're, demonstrating and exerting in a different way when you teach, having to watch somebody else and fix their issues. And you have to also be good at problem solving, because the same fix may not help one student that helped another. So sometimes you need to have 5 or 6 different ways to fix the same issue, whether it's technical, musical, or memory or learning. And so it has its own challenges and rewards when you're able to find that fix for that particular student, so that they end up sounding just as masterful as maybe another student that you might have had playing the same piece years before, or a piece that you played. But when you have more concerts going on, you start to feel you're in a different space mentally, because you do kind of quiet down when you're performing. Everything is more internal, waiting to be expelled on the stage, and you tend to take a few days just to hopefully be able to just practice, ruminate, and prepare. Also, for your energy, you feel the need to conserve that energy that you use when you're speaking in your lessons a lot, which you have to. So that's part of why you need to take a few days just to be practicing and not to be talking like this and communicating in that way. And so there is a change, but they definitely help each other.
Let's hear another of your CD from Samuel Barber's compositions, the Piano Sonata. It's movement too, which is so light and happy. It just uplifts you and it's so enriching.
Yes, I love the second movement. It's very playful, and it has a sparkly character that you don't often find in piano music. You really have to look for those gems, and it's a nice contrast, especially from the darkness of the first movement. And so I'd like to play that for you now.
Wish you all the very best with your new CD on Samuel Barber and with your Summer Music Festival in Austria. And we'll catch up with you when you come back. Well, thank you very much, Mira Gill.
Thank you for having me, Renee.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Stay healthy, stay positive.